Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and our personality today is Dona Gracia Mendes Nasi, born in 1510 and died in 1569. Dona Gracia was one of the great victims of the expulsion from Spain, and also somebody who triumphed over the circumstances that it created. She was born in Lisbon in 1510. Her family was from Aragon, but were forced to flee in 1492 and went from Spain into Portugal. But in Portugal in 1497 there was a forced conversion of all the Jews. Whereas in Spain, Jews were thrown out, in Portugal eventually they were not expelled, but rather they were forced to become Catholics. And this was true of Dona Gracia's family, such that she was known really for the first part of her life not as Gracia, but as Beatriz de Luna. Now her family were very important, very wealthy, very successful, and she married another successful man, her uncle in fact, when she was 18 years old, and he was a very successful trader in black pepper. She obviously showed that she was very capable as an assistant and as a help to him, because when he died, when she was just 28 years old, he split his estate between his wife and his brother, and who was also his business partner, and they both went into the business which their deceased brother and husband had left behind. She became increasingly wealthy and was probably carrying on in secret as a Jew. As well as being a Catholic externally, she was living a Jewish life internally and in private. For example, it's suggested that her marriage was celebrated both at a great Catholic Mass in Lisbon Cathedral, but also in a private chuppah with a ketubah to make sure it was a marriage also valid in Jewish law. Now her position both as a secret Jew and also as a very wealthy and successful businesswoman made her very vulnerable to attacks by those who were jealous or those who were opposed to her secret or private religious beliefs and practices. And therefore she had to move from place to place. Eventually she came to Antwerp. Now Antwerp was a little more liberal than Portugal or Spain themselves, but it was still under the control of the Spanish Inquisition, and so she was still there a converso, a crypto Jew, living as a Jew privately and not publicly. However, in Antwerp she was able to organise a secret passage for conversos, for crypto Jews to leave Spain and Portugal and reach freedom in the Ottoman Empire. And she poured a huge amount of money into supporting those Jews leaving the lands of their oppression and going to places where they could live openly and freely as Jews. She herself moved to Ferrara, and that's where she was able to live herself as an open Jew for the first time, and then settled more permanently in the Ottoman Empire, in areas around Istanbul, around Constantinople. There, as a fully open member of the Jewish community, she became known as La Senora. She reverted to her more Jewish name, Chana or Gracia. She used the name Nasi instead of de Luna, her previous Christian name, and she became a massive philanthropist. She opened her own printing press, and she in fact bought an area of Tiberias in the land of Israel and tried to establish a Jewish settlement there. So her importance really is multifold. First of all, she was a very successful woman in an age where very few women had those prominent positions unless they were monarchs like Queen Elizabeth or Queen Isabella of Spain. Second, she shows the endurance of the converso community, living for many years as a secret Jew and yet never surrendering her identity or her practices. Third, she's a rescuer of Jews from the lands of their oppression. And fourth, she's a sort of proto-Zionist trying to create a settlement in the land of Israel for Jews to live in peace and security. One of those most remarkable figures of 16th century Southern Europe, and one of the most remarkable women in Jewish history. Thanks for joining.